Welcome to Getting Made. Today we are sitting down with writer-director Matthew Thompson. His brand new series, Anomaly, is out now. It touches on the UAP phenomenon, and it is incredible. Real quick, a thank you to this episode's sponsors, Nature's Wildberry. Turn sour sweet. If you've got a sweet tooth and you're interested in maintaining a healthy lifestyle, take a look at Nature's Wildberry. You can find them on socials or search for their Shark Tank episode, or visit natureswildberry.com. Jaybird Coffee. If you love coffee, pick up some delicious chocolate truffle coffee at jaybirdcoffee.com. Airwolf Drones. Be it commercials, feature films, or live broadcast, Airwolf Drones has you covered from the air. Check out airwolfdrones.com. And now, a conversation with writer-director Matthew Thompson. Mr. Matt Thompson. Thank you for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Dude, it's a good day. I got up this morning. I was really excited that you were coming in.
Me too.
And I'm very excited about your film that you showed me, which looks very sharp.
Thank you.
What's the timeline for that? When is this?
We're gonna release the first episode of Anomaly on February 26th, and I've got 5 more episodes coming. Each one is kind of like a modern day. It's like an X-Files meets Twilight Zone, but 10 minutes for YouTube. And so every episode is based off of a quote-unquote true story of something specifically in the UFO phenomenon brought to life in like an ultra cinematic way. I feel like we're in this like new wave of UFO, UAP information. Yeah. There's been all this eyewitness testimony. There have been these recreations of things in docs and podcasts, but I haven't seen like a very cinematic portrayal of some of this stuff. And so that kind of inspired me to want to like put out my own series. So this first one's called Unidentified Submerged Object. It's about a USO.
Dude,
December 16th.
It gave me chills, man. Oh,
no, yeah, awesome.
At the very end there, I was like, oh man, I could feel the tingle. So I know that's a good indicator.
Oh, that is. The body doesn't lie.
Yeah, man.
That's so cool. Thank you for the great work you did on it.
Didn't even feel like work, Just come hang out at the beach.
Yeah. Your drone eye. And you really like to have an amazing drone operator. You do so many things, Rob, but somebody that just, it's in those finest details, somebody that's operating a drone, and you really can tell when somebody is like the way you move the camera, the way you glide it into place. It's like it's its own art form, and you can immediately tell who it's got that like innate talent for, and you got it. So thank you for giving that talent onto the project.
My pleasure, dude. My pleasure.
You gave the UFOs a point of view. I'll just say that.
Whew, maybe they'll spare me.
Yes.
What got you into this? Like, what got you into this subject matter?
Since my favorite movie growing up was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. My dad showed me that movie early on. I find out later, way later, like recently, I found out it was his favorite movie too. And I've probably seen it 40 or so times. And in general, between Close Encounters and E.T., I've always been a Spielberg guy, those two being my favorites. So I think I've always just had a fascination with extraterrestrials, UFOs, the unknown in the night sky, all the romance, all the wonder, all the awe associated with that. And when Lou Elizondo and Tom DeLonge joined, and Lou is he was the director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, which was the Pentagon's basically secret black program that investigated UFOs in recent day. Particularly military encounters with UAPs, UFOs. And he resigned in protest because he didn't believe that the information he was seeing and the interviews he was conducting with trained observers were finding their way to the chain of command as they should. So he resigns. Meanwhile, Tom DeLonge, Blink-182 rock star, who's just been also fascinated with UFOs, maybe for a similar reason as me, just as a kid. We're both San Diego boys. He's just been pursuing this topic using his rock star power to get to people in government, high-ranking generals. No one kind of believed him at first that like Tom DeLonge, Blink-182 guy, was talking with generals about UFOs being real until WikiLeaks happened.
Right.
Tom was talking with John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's chief of staff. Those emails get leaked, and it's like, oh, Tom was actually talking to all these generals.
Yeah.
Long story short, there's so much fascinating behind the scenes that happened here, but this was around, I think, 2017 when this happened with Tom, this happened with Lou. These two guys joined forces. Tom also created a team that was called To the Stars Academy. It was people that were coming from Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, from the CIA, from all these different sectors in government that were saying, we also agree that this topic is not just science fiction like what a lot of us grew up with Spielberg, with, like all the greats kind of had their, I feel like a lot of the greats had their touch with UFO subject matters. I mean, obviously Kubrick with space in general, not so much UFOs, I guess. The monolith is kind of anyway. So these guys came out and they're like, okay, this isn't science fiction, this is science fact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been happening since the beginning of human history, but particularly government has things that they're not talking about. This is the very long-winded answer to your question, but this whole thing happened, and I got asked to come in to basically document as a filmmaker what was going on. Tom had a documentarian that had left. He needed somebody new. There was someone that was working in Tom's office who knew me very well and said, Tom needs somebody he can trust. Can you come in and fill in and be a filmmaker, just documenting this group of people that are coming together for the first time ever, basically saying all this stuff that has been talked about is very real, and we're going to make it mainstream news. It's not going to be fringe news anymore. It's not going to have stigma. And so I was the documentarian of To the Stars Academy with Tom and Lou and all those guys for about a year. And simultaneously what was happening was the History Channel came around and they were like, we want to do a special on what's going on here because it was a fascinating story.
Yeah. And they have ancient aliens.
And they got ancient aliens. And History Channel loves UFO stuff.
Yeah.
And so they were also happy. So these things were kind of happening at the same time. I was sort of the guy literally operating the camera in the room and I've gotten to be very close with these guys. I mean, Tom's a SoCal guy and, you know, there's a story there I'll tell you about maybe really why I'm interested in the subject matter. But Tom made me realize I might be really into this for deeper reasons that I even know. He's a great guy. And I was working with them, and then I was also then brought onto the History Channel show because I was kind of always in the room. And so next thing I know, I'm the lead operator on the History Channel show, but I'm also directing and editing these videos specifically for To the Stars. And I kind of had this joint role between both, and I got to know these guys, and I basically got to travel the world and be in the room with everyone from Vietnam veterans who were salt of the earth people, their wives making us cookies when we walk in the door, super normal guys, to, you know, members of generals in Uruguay and in Argentina, to Vatican scholars in Rome. And all these people were saying similar stories about encounters they had with UFOs. And so when I got to, from a documentary perspective, see these things happening in real time, the boy in me that loved Close Encounters as a kid was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, kind of a dream come true. Absolutely a dream come true. And to be living in a time where a lot of things that you think are a part of your imagination are a part of reality is kind of like a blanket. It's kind of happening in a lot of realms in society these days. Like the simulation is slowly cracking open. And so because I got to have this really cool, front seat at these stories unfolding, at these really highly capable individuals, trustworthy individuals telling these stories, the storyteller in me was like, okay, this is no longer me wanting to make something because my filmmaker inspirations did it. It's because I now have my own brush with this subject matter, and I can see the look on people's faces who are telling me, one, this was the most magical thing to ever happen to them, and it filled their life with wonder and awe, but two, it filled them with terrible fear and anxiety, and they lost their families, and people thought they were crazy. And so it ranges everything in between. So I wanted to make my own take of combining the eyewitness testimony that I got to see through my adventures with To the Stars and the History Channel, paired with just the cinematic craft that me and you love so much and making our own story. And YouTube, I think, is just the perfect medium for it because everybody in this UFO fandom and beyond, they're all there. They're on Reddit, they're on X, they're on YouTube, and I just want to make things for them so that hopefully, one, it could be just enjoyable and it can be fun to see these things brought to life, but two, it can open it up a little bit more to really visualize what we're talking about here, and hopefully add that little cinema magic to it. So, yes.
Yeah.
That's the long answer for why I'm doing UFO stuff.
No, it's great. It's such a rich subject matter because like it's also a wonderful storytelling device because you've seen it with a lot of the greats. Like you have like Denis Villeneuve has done it with Arrival. Tarkovsky did it with Stalker. That movie blew my mind when I first saw it. I was like, because it was the first alien, non-alien film, meaning like the aliens had come and left, right? And so you're just dealing with a zone that was established by them, but they're no longer there.
Yeah.
And it was such an interesting philosophical exploration of the people who were trying to get into that area. That was, I think, in my opinion, like the pinnacle of what you can do with that storytelling device. But so what is the background that Tom DeLonge was talking to you about that you felt that was maybe the impetus for?
I was in the car with him. Like, I think it was the day I met him. I came down to the Stars in Encinitas, which is also my hometown. That's where I grew up. And Tom was like, "Can you get in the car? I want to come show you my camera stuff at my house." And Tom has a great arsenal of equipment, and he just kind of wanted to, I think, geek out on the tech with me because Tom's also a director and a filmmaker. He's a multi-hyphenate. So I'm on the way to his house. We're driving the 101. I'm in his, I think, Ford F-150. He's gonna be mad at me if it's not an F-150, some Ford. And we're driving, and he just goes, "Have you ever had a personal experience seeing a UFO or an alien?" And I was like, "No. Like, I wish. Like, I don't think I've ever actually seen anything." And he's like, "Okay. Have you ever had a dream about it?" And in that moment, I remembered that, I had this dream as a kid that included an alien, and I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, I had a dream. And he goes, what was it? And I tell him it, and it's basically, I was really young. I remember being low to the ground. Do you remember those memories where you're just like really low to the ground so like you're a kid, you're really small? Yeah. And I remember waking up, going downstairs. I could hear what sounded like the TV on downstairs, and I'm going down the steps very slowly, and there's some light down the hall, and I round the corner into the living room, and there is my dad and an alien, what looked like a tall white alien, is the classification that these are called, watching the TV, like a movie, and they both just look at me at the same time, and I fall on my face, and I wake up. And I had that several times as a kid. And I lost my dad when I was 10. Okay. And so I told Tom this story, and he just goes, "You're meant to be here." And I get chills, and I'm like, "Oh, cool." The call to adventure couldn't be more awesome. And I think that it made me definitely feel like, okay, this is a really cool thing that I don't know what my dad has to do with this, what my background has to do with this, whatever it has to do with this. It's not really at all about me, but I do think that all of us kind of have a call to something in our lives that we are meant to do, and we're perfectly positioned through all of our experiences to be ready for that thing. Everybody has it. And in this situation, I felt like, oh man, it kind of does make sense that I'm here. I was like, you're right, Tom. I was like, I am meant to do this. And it gave me even more of that excitement to be a part of it. And, a lot of those moments that I remember the most with those guys, especially Lou Elizondo, who's also a close friend, is that they see life in ways that are beneath the surface. There's this invisible fabric that connects the universe that they're not afraid to talk about, whether you say it in consciousness or you say it in spirituality or you say it in aliens. It's sort of all the same thing. And maybe back to what you're talking about these great filmmakers that all like to dabble in it. It's because aliens and UFOs and the unknown is just such a perfect representation of the unknowable of reality that we are as humans always aware that there's so much more to reality that we just don't know about, and we just decide not to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as an artist, you're constantly curious to want to explore that. Like, okay, but what about that like elephant in the room of the thing that we're all wondering, which is like, what happens after you die? Where did we come from? What else is out there in the universe? Okay, people have weird, experiences, and if you're in a comfortable enough setting, they'll share with you kind of an esoteric experience that they don't want to share, and almost everybody has one if you give them the place to talk about it. So what is that thing that everybody has? And I think like it was aroused in me, in this group of guys and in these filmmakers to talk about it. And I think the cinematic craft of storytelling, where you can take a certain amount of music and sound and visuals, and you don't have to get it exactly right, but you can point to what might be right, is the best way to explain what's going on. It's almost like, what I mean by that is like, there's sort of like the Plato's allegory of the cave, where like we're just looking at the shadows on the wall. We can't really see the reality. We might never be able to in this state as a being. But like with art, you can make that shadow really interesting and more interesting for people. So they're like, wait, yeah, okay, a tic-tac UFO. Yeah, like somehow that just, it's more like, yeah, maybe that literally is a real thing, and there's literally a real entity that pilots or whatever that craft. But even if it's not 100% photo real true, if you know what I mean, it still represents something that is like, yeah, this huge category of something is existing out there that we don't know what it is. We've been able to describe it only to the degree that we've been able to evolve as a species. And what I mean by that is like when we interviewed these Vatican scholars, they would call them flaming shields in ancient Rome, flying through the sky.
Right.
That was
how they described it.
That's how they described it. And then it turned into flying saucers in the Industrial Revolution, and then it turned into drones, and now Tic Tacs, when now we have technology that is sort of reminiscent of that. So we're doing our best to describe something we can't explain.
It is so interesting how language, our vocabulary, dictates so much of our thought. You know what I mean? Like it really is almost like the confines of our thought. And it can be very scary to be thinking about the limitations of that. But yeah, it is interesting. I think you would have really loved to have chatted with Father Folco, because he was very well versed. Obviously he was like, the ancient language expert. And every time he would go to Egypt, he was on a million lists. They knew exactly who he was. You know what I mean? And
I've heard amazing things about Father Folco.
Oh, he's just the best. He was on Ancient Aliens a couple times.
I heard that. Yeah. And didn't he help translate the Aramaic for Mel Gibson for Passion of the Christ?
Yeah, he did all that. Yeah.
So cool.
And just the best guy. And he was basically like a real life Indiana Jones.
So cool.
Oh my gosh, you guys would have hit it off.
I know. I wish I would have known him.
I wanted to ask you about, it's interesting that people tend to look at like this punk rock aesthetic and dismiss it. But I think that there is an element of great scientists that is very punk rock. And one of the things about Blink-182 that I think is hilarious is that they were probably instrumental in helping capture Saddam Hussein. Did you see that? Yeah, so they were playing shows on Navy boats, and I guess they were next to an admiral, and not Tom, but the bassist, or
was it Mark?
Yeah. So Mark mentioned to the admiral, he was like, "Listen, my dad was in the military. I know how you can catch Saddam Hussein." They literally took his instructions, which were to fly helicopters silently over the landscape and then project a certain radio frequency that was indetectable to the human ear, but that would show up when they recorded the VHS tapes for Saddam Hussein's interviews. Yeah. So Saddam was making videotapes of himself, right?
Wow.
And that sound from the helicopters that they were projecting was being recorded on the videotape inaudibly to the human ear. And when they got the tapes back and they played it back, they could track where his triangulation was. based off of Mark's input, which is crazy.
Wow.
So Blink-182 likely captured Saddam Hussein because that admiral then went to the Pentagon like the following week and mentioned this harebrained scheme that Mark had come up with, and it ended up like, you know,
that's so cool.
Isn't that wild?
That is so cool.
But there's a lot of
wow
high-level scientists that have this sort of punk rock mentality, Richard Feynman being one of them, where he's like, just whatever you do it like with full passion and like almost irreverently, you know, just wing it, you know, just go for it, like full tilt.
The irreverence, I think, is the key there. I think where people start to put on the filter of what's appropriate or what's what is proper. Punk rockers don't.
Yeah.
They say the thing you're not supposed to say. They do the thing you're not supposed to do. And maybe they end up giving the bit of information that most people wouldn't be brave enough to give to help capture Saddam Hussein. Yeah. Or to realize, you know, I think that filter, it's such a cool way to put it. And I think actually I noticed Tom has it too. It's like, if something is being given to you as a bit of inspiration, if it's on the tip of your tongue, just kind of do it.
Yeah. Don't waste time. Yeah.
Don't waste time. Now, sometimes what that means is a picture of Sasquatch's dick on Instagram. And sometimes what that means is some profound knowledge about the universe.
Right.
But it's everything.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's there's genius to that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting, dude. It's such a, I always get fascinated by people's paths, and people will ask me like, how do I start in this? How do I do this? And I'm like, man, good luck. Cause everybody's path, like we were talking about this a little bit earlier, where it's just like, sometimes you think that this is the path that you're going on, and all of a sudden there's this like chance occurrence that occurs, and you're like, oh, wait a second. Now my path is completely different.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've had a couple of those.
Yeah. And that was a call. That wasn't me seeking it. Although I would love to say that you know, that was something that I think I gave myself some strategic roadmap to accomplish. I didn't. I got a call from Lisa Clifford, who's been like a second mom since I was a kid. I grew up with her, and she worked in Tom. She's, you know, basically has worked with Tom for years and years, and is his right hand. And now I think all the work that I did up until that point gave me a trustworthiness.
Yeah.
So that when the call came, I was the right person. Yeah. But it came out of nowhere in a way. I was actually on a 10-day silent retreat. I did a 10-day Vipassana. Dude, the whole thing's actually crazy.
That's great.
I was on a 10-day silent retreat. And on that, I had this wasn't when it first came in, but I had already met the team and kind of had the first introduction of like almost like when Will Smith in Men in Black goes in and sees what's going on and the aliens are real, and then he's kind of sitting on that park bench afterwards. He's like, what is...
Contemplating everything.
Everything, you know, like people are walking by and it's like, are you an alien? And that version of a moment had already happened, but then I went on this retreat, which I was always planning on doing. I was in my mid-20s, I think I was 24, 25. So it was that period of time where you're open to the universe in a way that is very special in your 20s. And I went on this retreat, and on this retreat, I got a call. Like it's a 10-day where you're not supposed to talk to anybody or make eye contact with anybody. Like that, the whole point of the retreat is you're really just left alone with your thoughts. And I actually super recommend it to anybody who, when I just said it, something in them was like, I should do that. Follow it. Because it's this beautiful chance for you to just sit with your own soul for 10 days and you just meditate for 10 hours a day. And I won't say anything more than that because it's very special to just experience. But it is surgery on the soul. And so I was doing a lot of thinking, and I'm not looking at anybody. I'm not talking. You can't read. You can't write. Your phone's locked away in a locker. And then somebody comes up to me in the middle of a meditation, one of the assistants there saying, there's a call for you in the office. Wow. And I'm thinking like somebody died, you know? And it was the show calling, saying they want you to be a part of this thing. It's a real thing. History Channel is going to start going and filming, and Tom wants you da-da-da. Like, it was the call. It was like the call to adventure. And it's in the middle of this retreat. And it just happening in that way, you can't help but think, okay, that was like a very cool movie moment. And that was something that I think was very overt and very like a movie scene. But it does, I think, happen to all of us where the things that were meant to be led to in our lives, more often than not, almost like come to us. And it's really our job to like decipher those omens, those signs, those calls, because sometimes they're way more of a whisper.
Mm-hmm.
This was very loud and obvious, which I'm lucky for.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we talked about this earlier, where like all the coolest things that have happened in my career where when I was chasing something else, but then all of a sudden I get like a call coming in or something coming towards me that's that's like pulling me another direction, and it seemingly seems like something I don't want to do. Like I didn't want to do documentary at all when this first happened. I was team scripted. I was team like doc equals lesser cool storytelling. Because remember back then, like before doc storytelling and all these, you know, really high quality documentaries have been coming out lately. Documentary, I think, had like this journalist stigma to it. And I don't want to do it. But this was the coolest subject of all time. So it made me as a storyteller want to do it. But it wasn't obviously what I wanted to do, but by saying yes to it, it led to everything that has now happened since in my career that I think is pretty cool. So it's one of those things where you get a call, and if you just sit with some of these calls in a way that you're like, okay, this is not at all what in my head I wanted to do, but something about this I can't stop thinking about, and I think I just should try it. My dad used to say, choose the experience, which I was kind of just like, what? But as I've gone along in life, I'm like, oh, more often than not, when I'm having a difficulty in trying to decide, it's usually whether to do something or not to do something. And if you're really sitting there, I'm getting youth pastory on you, but like, you know, if you're really sitting there and you just don't know, and you're doing the pros and cons list and whatever, but you just are like, can't tell. I think what he meant was just like, in that moment, choose the experience of the thing instead of not doing it. Because by doing something, you will more clearly know whether that thing is meant for you or not. And you can always stop. But if you decide not to do something, you'll always have that lingering thought of like, should I have done that? And it's kind of the whole thing of like, I'd rather regret something I did than something I didn't do. Now, you obviously have to have discernment with this advice about certain things. But I think in general, when it's like, do I take this gig that I didn't think I would take, but for some reason I keep thinking maybe I should, and I just don't know, choose the experience. Do it. Do it and see where it leads you, you know?
Chasing aliens.
Chasing aliens? Sure. With Tom DeLonge from Blink-182? Where's that going to lead? Well, everything I'm doing now is because of it in a cool way. Yeah.
That is so interesting, man. And it is fascinating to see, like, there's a couple of things that is really interesting around that. One is like how prevalent it is in the news right now, like constantly. Like I see it all the time, and we're talking like congressmen and like, you know, we're talking reputable sources talking about underwater bases and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, like, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but like there's an act that was removed. I think it was 2012, but it allowed the weapons grade propaganda that was used on a lot of other countries by the U.S. in order to do regime change was repealed, and it was allowed to take place on American soil to Americans. And so like a lot of the stuff that we've been, like you were saying, it's like, what is real? It's like we've been under a significant amount of attack when it comes to weapons grade propaganda over the last 13 years. And there's movements right now to, you know, put that back in place. Because boy, man, when you have people questioning like foundational things, you know, it becomes, you know, very problematic, where it's like, you know, we have to agree on some things, guys. Like we have to agree on, you know, a couple of items, but right. From a physics perspective, from a scientific perspective, it is really fascinating to go down some of these rabbit holes where you're like, wow, science, like reality, in quotes, is so strange that it's very easy to suspend your disbelief for pretty much anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on so many things there that I think is kind of like the, if there was a timestamp in history, this like age of information, age of technology has created so many beautiful things and so many Wild West moments of humanity. And this idea of like, what do you agree on? What do you not agree on? What is physics starting to say? But what is outside of physics, which physicists would say is nothing, you know, like, it's a really cool time because information is shared in a way that's never been shared before. It's manipulated in a way that's never been manipulated before. Okay, we all know this. But when it comes to like opening yourself up to information that is truly foundation shifting, historically humans are not good at it. We burn people at the stake for saying that the earth wasn't the center of the universe. Right. We've done way worse. So as a collective whole, people are very afraid of new information. It's in our instincts as humanity. And I actually listened to this really cool podcast recently, Know Thyself, and it was all about, the particular subject matter was essentially just that the nature of reality is so great and so dense in every single moment of every day. Even right now, sitting here looking at you, Rob, this microphone in front of me, this coffee, all this, there's so much information. Our brains actually are a filtering device to minimize that information, to give us something to be able to focus on, to just carry on with our day. Because if you really just are open to everything, you can't function. So our brains, through this, which I think is kind of a cool thought, is like our brains have basically developed to filter out reality. And if that's the case, to filter things back in that our brains have for so long filtered out is a difficult thing. It's like a muscle. It's like you can't go to the gym and just like lift 100 pounds when you've never been to the gym. That muscle's weak. So these muscles in our brains to believe certain things are like they're not there. It takes some time.
Incremental exposure.
Incremental exposure. So incremental exposure, incremental disclosure is actually what is a huge thing that so many people in the UFO community argue about, because some people say rip the Band-Aid off. We as the people deserve to know everything immediately. Who are you in these powers of position to hold secrets of the universe away from us? And on the other side, you get people in positions of power who understand humanity, who say, well, actually, we're really bad at just going in and lifting 100 pounds at once. So incremental disclosure maybe is the best way to make it so that society doesn't collapse. And then you get other people that say, well, who are you to say that you can decide that? And so there's this battle going on about that very thing you're talking about, which is we're understanding new things about the world, and how and when and in what manner does that information get conveyed to the populace. And anytime somebody is taking any approach towards something that isn't just punk rock, let's take all the filters off and say everything, you're going to get people that disagree with the approach. But you also got to see that I think there's sometimes when you have this incremental disclosure, you've got things happening slowly or trickling over time. And what I mean by this, if you're not into the world, a lot of people into this world know exactly what I'm talking about. But like from the outside, you can just say the simple fact that UFOs are real was kind of step number one. Not to even say they're aliens, just to say there's something in our airspace that Navy and Air Force pilots are seeing and they can't explain. That was actually step number one. Now, once everybody came to that consensus, it was like, okay, now, are they from here? And you brought up this kind of military-industrial complex type thing where there is a lot of people that believe, okay, well, the UFO phenomenon is just being perpetuated right now to try to get the U.S. to put more money into defense budgets. Because if there's UFOs flying around, whether they're from China, whether they're from Russia, whether they're from another planet, well, the U.S. needs more money to spend to protect. And some people think it's that. And I'm like, well, I mean, that makes sense. Maybe somebody has taken advantage of that, but doesn't change all the eyewitness testimony that's existed for decades and hundreds of years. Now, then there's this other kind of, I guess there's this other path, which is people realizing that humans in general have a set of a daily needs and daily things that are important to them that just help them to be fed, to have happiness, to pay their rent, and big subjects such as the nature of reality and what else is out there, and maybe there are entities floating around us right now that we can't comprehend. Some of those things is just like too much for some people that are just like, I can't pay my rent, or like, I can't find happiness. And so there's sort of like a sympathy and an empathy for the world when you kind of say, well, let's go one step at a time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there's also the alternative, which is, well, don't give me the agency as a human
Right. Yeah.
to know. And I'm kind of like just giving you the both sides of this because I think it's really interesting when you're online and you see the really loud voices on either side of any of these, what you're talking about, which is the dissemination of new information, new physics being brought to light. You're going to get these extreme opinions online, mostly because people that are talking online have extreme opinions.
Sure.
The people that don't have extreme opinions aren't going to take their time to post about it online, but that's still a lot of people that are kind of right in the middle, like, yeah, I kind of think what they're doing is a good idea. And physics itself is unraveling in a sense where we're just sort of recognizing that, hey, there's like, again, that filtered out part of reality that the human brain has done such a good job at. Well, we're discovering there's so much more to this. We're discovering there's these quantum entanglements that happen where two things can exist on opposite sides of the universe and still be connected somehow. What? Like that one thing itself is insane. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. We are learning that there's life on Mars, even microbial life. We are learning that there's other planets that have tons of water and probably have other life. Like, it's just sort of like this new information is coming out in general. The UFO phenomenon is something that I think perfectly encapsulates that, because you're going to get all the opinions under the sun about the same problem, which is, what do humans do when we're confronted with a ton of new information that we have not organized our life around before?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of examples of that. I mean, you have to have the framework to understand it. That's for sure. You have to have the vocabulary to understand it. And maybe that's the first step, is exposing people to some sort of way of describing what they're seeing. I was going to, what I was talking to you about earlier, about when you were showing me the sequence, and I was like, oh, I got to talk to you about this. It was my brother, for my birthday a couple years back, we went into this sensory deprivation tank. And the guy that introduced us, that's like running this tank, was obviously an expert in LSD. Like, obviously. Like, this dude was like an oracle from the Matrix. He was just like, okay, here's how it's going to go. And so he's like, all right, I'm going to leave you in the tanks for an hour, and then I'll come back and get you. And we're like, okay, great, wonderful. Dude goes and falls asleep. We're in the tanks for like 3 hours plus, right? Yeah. Time shifted.
Wow.
But so for like the first 10 minutes or so, you know, my neck is tense. I'm not really fully relaxed and all that sort of stuff. And then after about 15 minutes, I finally let go, and I'm just floating there. And I realize I don't have to like keep my neck muscles tense in order to keep my head above the water. And then maybe about 30 minutes or so in, this voice that I guess maybe it's like my inner self or whatever it may be, is talking to myself. And it's like, hey, you want to see something cool? And I was like, okay. And it's like, all right, come with me. And I was like, I swear I'm not on drugs. I'm completely sober. But this happened. I'm lying in this tank, and this voice goes, you want to see something cool? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, all right, come with me. And almost like what you showed me earlier, the underwater sequence, I had a very similar vision where I went through multiple levels, and they were filled with what appeared to be like coral reefs or something like that, but they were very clear things that I could recognize that were very sharp. And they were like talons and like stuff that was like clearly dangerous. But as long as I stayed close to the guide that was taking me through these versions, to these worlds, I was going to be fine. But I had to stay close, obviously. And it was just this very strange experience where, as I was going deeper and deeper and deeper, like they would change colors. Like I would be in a different realm. But it is overstimulus, like complete overwhelming of my brain, how much of these shapes I was going through. And it was a realization of like, I am so tiny. My brain does not possess the hardware to fathom the expanse of what I'm traveling through. And
wow.
Yeah, it was very humbling.
Yeah.
And completely sober, probably some sort of like natural DMT dump or something like that. But it was like, wow, I am definitely like seeing a whole extra space.
Well, what a perfect representation of what we're talking about, where you were in a space where your brain that is used to filtering out reality could settle down because you were in sensory deprivation. You had your senses closed down for a minute, so something deeper in you, greater in you, consciousness in you, the soul in you opened up all of a sudden, and you were shown things that, your brain is shadows to your brain to what the real thing is.
Yeah. And it's like deep primitive stuff that I was obviously not acknowledging. And like Carl Jung talks about this too. Jung talks about in Aeon, which is a very dense text, but it's just like stuff that is just way deep under the surface that you just can't possibly know about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that scares people, especially in terms of like an all-knowing God, that an all-knowing God could potentially know you better than you know yourself. Like that's like, whoa. Ooh.
Well, and I mean, I think Carl Jung got it right. I'm a student of Jung, and it's the God in you, though, right? Like the piece of it is God not out there, separate from us. It is the God that is also inside of us, that is within us. The more you go inward and excavate the inner journeys and wonders and mysteries of yourself, that leads the way to explore the outer and the greater. I mean, literally down to the imagery of the inside of a cell compared to the galaxies and the solar systems. And I'm sure you've seen those pictures, right? Like the Powers of 10, where you see the way a spiral galaxy looks and the way the inside of it.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many of those. And I think there's some secret ingredient there where by going inward and exploring inward, can you find the revelations outward? And some people go outward and journey outward when everything is already inside of them. And as storytellers and filmmakers, I think you got to be a part scientist, part artist, because it's an exploration, it's an expedition, it's curiosity about why things work the way they work. And the hero's journey inward is oftentimes more fraught with pain and sorrow and sacrifice and humility and all the things than anything you're going to see yourself do in your external life, but they are, I think the journey inward begets the journey outward. I mean, I don't think it was a coincidence that when I was taking my journey inward on a 10-day silent retreat, all of a sudden my journey outward became much more rich.
Yeah.
I'm sure some psychologist or somebody somewhere is looking at that and saying, yeah, that makes sense, And I think you will be met in your external world as deeply as you meet yourself in your internal world. I really do believe that because I have the experience of it, and those are the things I believe in the most, the things I've experienced. And I think back to what you experienced in the sensory deprivation chamber, there is something that humans are, well, I'll get rid of humans. Something I have a hard time with is the humility to say, I cannot know everything about the nature of existence. However, that's where beauty starts. That's where faith begins. That is what has been the professing mode of moral conduct since humans started to organize themselves, which is, hey, believe in that which is where your knowledge ends, and have faith that the rest is taking care of you. It's the same story over and over again. And now we're talking about it in the matters of physics and material sciences. Well, we don't really know what that means. Well, it's like we've never known what anything means. But to have the humility to say we don't, and to then replace that with a level of deep faith and hope instead of fear and abandonment and chaos, that is the decision we have as humans at every moment, is where our knowledge ends, what do you fill it with? You fill it with hope, faith, wonder? Do you fill it with fear, chaos, darkness? And I think that's, as a filmmaker, where I come in and I say, I want to fill it with stories that acknowledge one, but point you to the other. They acknowledge that there will be fear that happens when we acknowledge things we can't explain, pain, sacrificing an old world we used to think we know. But on the other side of that, is wonder and awe and beauty and something much more rich, which is really feeling a part of a great big universe and not having to need to know all of it. And so like in Anomaly, I want to take people through an emotional experience that has some fear and some dread, because all that is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the end, and you'll see when you see this first episode, and I won't spoil anything, but at the end, I think the last final moment I want people to have is not necessarily fear, not necessarily, oh my God, we are dwarfed, we are inferior to something far better than us. Why do we have to think that way? Why not just be like, whoa, we live in a time where maybe we know there's something else really cool going on. How awesome is that? We're going to die anyway. The time on this earth is so short. It might as well be something filled with something that's like incredibly cool. Why add another thing to our list to be afraid of? Like, that's a waste of our time being alive. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because the interpretation of reality is like the way that we respond is quite literally the only control we have over ourselves.
Yes.
We can't control reality itself. Reality is going to do its thing, but the way in which you respond to it that's on you. And that is interesting because you can either have a really good time or a really bad time depending on how you respond to it.
I think you said it perfectly right. That is at the end of the day, the one thing we have control over is really the way we react to life and things. We can't always control the emotions of our body. We see a great white shark, we're going to be scared.
Yeah.
We see something like a UFO hovering over, and certain people have said in interviews that I've conducted with them that they're terrified.
Yeah.
They can't make themselves be like, oh, how wonderful. You just react. But it's kind of like what you do after. And you take the time to think about life. You take the time to think about even the scariest parts of your life. And I think even there, even people that experience the darkest, most terrible, hard things in life, UFOs aside, I just mean humanity. There are some that when you think and sit with these horrible, terrible, fearful, scary, unknown things long enough, there is beauty that comes from it. Usually what it does is it makes you into a person stronger, or it makes you appreciate life more. There's always something that's there. There's always some option to choose and grab hold of. I think the positive. And this kind of gets into, there's a bigger project I'm working on now. And it'll be announced soon, and it's with Lou, and it's involving a lot of the stuff in this subject matter. And the part of this project that I'm most excited about is that I really, in the writing, take it to this place of, let's just say all this is a big yes and. UFOs, aliens, entities, powerful, more powerful than us, stronger than us, even hurting us, not hurting us. All of it's real. All of it's real, totally real. It's part of life. What now? What's the next step? Not the step of let's just decide whether this stuff is real or how real or who's in control of it, and let's just argue over how things are being handled. But let's just say this is a part of life, that that entities live among us, and humans aren't maybe the most dominant species on the planet. Okay. Well, what are we supposed to do with that? In a way, we've been talking about what to do with that in every major religion, whether it's the gods of Mount Olympus, angels, God, in different vocabulary words for different things. We've always wrestled with the fact that, okay, we are probably not the only best, furthest, most developed, most evolved species. However, there's something really incredibly amazing about being a human. And to maybe just focus on what is that amazing power of being a human, and even more so being a collective group of humans on one planet. What can we unleash together when we say we're not going to heed fear, we're not going to live out of fears, we're going to live out of wonder and possibility? What kind of planet can we create then? Who cares if we're the strongest, best, number one? But just what can we do when we just get rid of these fears? We can do like incredible things. We can maybe create a life that is in total harmony with Mother Nature in a way we've never comprehended before. We can do so much that I think, and so many people say, well, it's not of the human condition. That's like La La Land. The human condition, and if you go to a warring country or any other place in the world, people are starving, dying, fighting, all these things. And it's like, okay, that's all true, but can't you just boil all that down to like certain groups of people have immense fear, and that fear that they're feeling, they're acting on, and it's begetting more fears and it's begetting more chaos. Well, if that just one decision of like, what do you do in the face of fear? What's your reaction to fear? If that generationally as humans can start to be thought of in a different way, and this is where I think storytelling is really powerful, is you can start to have the survival information that says, okay, stories back in the day were meant to help people maybe learn how to survive a hunt, which again is what to do when you're wrestling with a fear. Well, now maybe like stories are needed to say, okay, there's a new set of fears here. And what do we do in the face of those? Like that's, I think, a storyteller's place in society, which some people say, let me just show you what's going on. I'm not going to try to make an opinion about it. I'm just going to show you the chaos. And those are still great filmmakers. And I think there can also be stories that exist that say, and this is what religion has tried to do, which is considering all these unorganized energies of chaos of life and nature, I'm going to point to something that's a possibility that might help you grow from this, that might help create something positive and beautiful and new and organized in a disorganized state. And yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, that was a crazy flow.
No, I think about the way in which we interpret things, and of course where we are in our life when we're being exposed to that transmission of information. So when it comes to like filmmaking, right, like you might have this amazing sequence in your film, but the audience might not have any context for or how they should feel or respond to it if they haven't seen the lead up, you know. And so like that art of taking that audience on that journey that prepares them for that one pivotal, whether it be the climactic scene or whatever, but there's plenty of great examples of filmmaking that I think are beyond just the language barrier. You know what I mean? Like you feel it in a totally different region. And I think that it's not, telepathy is such a silly word to try to use in that sense, but there's a again, might not have the word to describe it, but we should come up with some word that describes this feeling that you can deliver to an audience that you felt when you were trying to bring the film together, to try to bring the artwork together. Jason does a really good job of this, obviously, through his music, where you just, like, you feel it. He's in the flow, and you feel exactly what he's putting, whatever he's transmitting, you know? It's like there's other ways of communicating than just our audible language, you know?
Yeah.
It's a real art form that I think you could probably spend your entire life trying to get to the bottom of and never hit bottom. You know what I mean? It's probably bottomless.
Well, what you're describing, which is sort of this like translation of an innate feeling into something that becomes a story or a piece of creative art, like that very thing is like, I think why I have the positioning and the opinions I have about this subject matter came because I experienced fear first, confusion next, wonder last. Like that arc of an emotional journey was something that I felt going through this. So I know that there's a fundamental human truth to that. So that's a cool formula for a film.
Definitely, yeah.
Start with fear.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff gets confusing as hell. But when by the end, it's quite wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of like the journey of our human life.
Mm-hmm.
Come into this world and everything's kind of scary and new, and we're crying and we're babies and we're just trying to be like, what can we trust?
Mm-hmm.
What's real?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's confusing. Tell me that the 20s don't represent confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And the 30s. And then do I have kids, not have kids? When do I have kids? When do I do for my job? What do I not do? Why am I upset? Why am I not upset? All the confusion. But a lot of people that I think have lived a rich life, and my grandfather, for instance, when I talk with him, he's 95.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's had hard times in his life, but if you ask him about it, he doesn't even remember.
Mm-hmm.
It's like things are quite wonderful. Now, that's not everybody, but that's a way to live life.
Mm-hmm.
But by the end of it all, saying a big yes and to all of it, you can kind of say, wow, what a wonderful journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple of things I was thinking about when you were saying that. Is like you definitely build up the ability to have resilience. Like, you know, you might take a licking in your early 20s or something like that, and you think the world's going to end, and then you get past it, and then the next time you encounter some hardship, oh, wait a second, like it might not feel any better, but you know that you're going to get past it, you know, and then you do, and then you're like, okay, now I'm just accumulating these experiences, and every time it might still sting a little bit, but you know you're going to get beyond it. And then the other thing I was thinking was like, you had mentioned your grandfather, and I was thinking like, what is the
like that he didn't kind of remember the parts in his life.
Yeah, what did he go through?
Bad. Well, I mean, he had 6 kids. My mom's one of 6. He's 95, but he still acts like his brain is the exact same since I met him in this world 30 years ago.
That's incredible.
31 years ago. You know, it's crazy. And I just
genes.
think, yeah, I mean, he grew up in the Great Depression. He came to United States through a family that English was their second language, Spanish was their first language. Mm-hmm. And so he was kind of, whatever, you know, in schools at that time, if you were a Spanish speaker, there was definitely some racism there. And, you know, he went through stuff, but like when you talk to him about life, like none of that's there.
Yeah.
It's how wonderful every day is that he's alive for another day.
That's awesome.
It's a really beautiful optimism. And I'm like, okay, well, there's no secret why you're 95 and looking and feeling so good. There's something about that attitude towards life that is, and I don't think that attitude is given to people because their lives were easy. Right. I think that attitude can be taken by people who have the hardest lives sometimes. It's, I do think it's a choice. In some ways. And I think that, you know, I mean, I'm probably coming from the point of view of a son who grew up without a father. You kind of always start to look for father figures in everyone. Obviously, my grandfather's a very obvious one, but like you look for it everywhere. You look for it in your heroes, your mentors, and you're constantly trying to I was just constantly trying to accumulate a certain knowledge of like, how do you live? How are you supposed to live?
Yeah.
Like, how are you really supposed to live?
Yeah.
Which is a crazy question to ask yourself. Like, how am I supposed to live?
Yeah.
And when you're constantly seeking that answer out of people, you go through life looking at people being like, what is inspiring on this type of life, this type of way? And it's almost like watching a bunch of different movies, and you're just like, you're in Blockbuster and you're watching a bunch of different movies, like, which scenes do I like, you know? And then you want to steal those scenes and make your own movie. You know, I mean, I think I felt that way about a lot of people throughout my life, where it's like, oh, I'm going to steal that scene, how you live that way and that way. And then I'm just left to make my own movie with all those scenes I stole from everybody else's life. And then I got my own original movie. That's what we do when we make our own movies.
That's projecting, you know, you're putting yourself in the scenario and just saying like, how would I respond to this, and how can I respond better to this? And I feel like that's the real strength. You can do it in novels, but I think films really take it to a whole other level. Oh, I remember what I was going to tell you. It was interesting how you were saying lead with fear, and it's like when you look at all the different messengers that come to people in Scripture, they always start with fear not, right? And so it's like,
Yeah.
hey, we know you're gonna freak out. Just don't for a second, right?
I love that. It's so true. And I think so many people cut themselves off from a genuine experience of life because they're like, I don't want to experience that fear. I don't want to feel that thing again. I don't want to know what opening that door will bring into my life. So people cauterize a narrow tunnel through life where they don't have to where they as little as possible have to experience that fear. But I think if you, like you said, like the Gospels, the scriptures, they all say like, fear not, meaning you will be afraid, but just know that's going to be a part of life at the start of anything wonderful in the end. And if you get that in your head, so it's not like, oh, I'm just don't want the hard part of that. And instead you're like, the hard part is just the necessary beginning, but I'm looking forward to what's going to come in the end of this. I really do think you open yourself up to so much more richness in life. It goes back to what I was saying about choose the experience. It's the same thing. I think it's what my dad was trying to talk about. I mean, my dad was, military, special forces, crazy career. And I'm sure he was in so many situations that were so scary. And I'm sure that when you are comfortable when you have that relationship with fear and with, it's not this big boogeyman in the room anymore. It's just a part of life. And I think there's a richness that comes from that and not avoiding fear. I think a lot of also where everybody in their artistic path and their path is becoming the human they're meant to be, I think you can boil so much of it down to how willing are you to embrace the fear of something new in your life that is genuinely scary, and you're not crazy for thinking that. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, right.
Just because it's scary, just because it's painful, just because it's going to come with a certain amount of harsh feelings. I wrote this movie called Paranormia about a neighborhood where it's like a magical realist kind of Sweeney Todd. I'm sorry, Edward Scissorhands type thing, where every neighbor on the block is keeping a secret in their basement, but they don't know that everybody else on the block is also doing that. So they've built their lives around keeping the monster in their basement a secret from the next door neighbors. And then the kids in that neighborhood all band together to try to get their parents to face their monsters. And
that's great.
Yeah, it's really, it's, you can see what that one's about. And in the writing of that, the theme of that I had taped on my computer, which I do for everything I write, I tape the simple human truth, which is be scared, do it anyway.
Yeah, that's courage. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think with the UFO phenomenon, with any phenomenon, with the information age that we're in right now, a lot of it's scary. But walk through it. Don't avoid it. Just like step towards it. See what happens. And if you make a habit of that, and it maybe is so easy for me to talk about this so like fluidly, because like there's so many things in my life that I'm like, God, I just wish I would have just walked towards it, and I didn't, and I was just afraid. And when you have enough of those moments, you're like, okay, I'm going to project it all over my work so that maybe I won't do it again.
Yeah.
I'll be as brave as my characters and my stories. I'll be as brave as I can talk about on a podcast. And you just surround yourself with it to try to tell yourself, be brave, be brave, be brave. But like, the reality is like, I'm less brave more often than I'd like to be. But I think I've been brave just at the right enough times that I have found my life leading in really cool ways where I could be working on a project that's a dream come true. It's not because I always get the decision right, but I just got it right just enough times. And there's been grace for all the times I didn't get it right, which I do believe is something greater than us, leading us where we're supposed to go. And so, yeah, I mean, the UFO storytelling that I find myself doing now, I think is really cool because it's a way that I am grappling with this unknowable, knowable parts of being alive and being a human that are particularly ripe for my time in life. And it just so happens to be connected to the zeitgeist at this time, which is that humanity as a whole is struggling with what is knowable, what's unknowable. Where's that space in between? What are the emotions that come with that? How do you navigate your way through them? I'm sure one day maybe they'll just be like really sweet, innocent Pixar films when I have kids or something, but not that right now.
You have a really tremendous range. I mean, like, Anomaly has this like very has dark overtones, and then you do the children's book movie, which is incredible, but totally different vibe. Like it's kind of like you're doing a George Miller situation, right? It's like Happy Feet and Mad Max. Like, what inspired you to do the children's book film?
The mood swing. I wrote it as a series, actually, of 5 short films called A Mixtape for You, in parentheses for me. And it was something I had written in COVID, right around the time all this was happening, with To the Stars, with COVID happening, with going on this 10-day silent retreat. The theme of it was like looking inward to grow outward. And so I made one film called Peace, which was about that. Which was this idea of like trying to understand all the different sides of who I am and make sense of it like a puzzle. And then the mood swing was this idea of trying to grapple with finding balance in what felt like extreme highs and lows that my life would have. Just extreme highs of like chasing a dream, and then extreme lows like early death and, or sadness or heartbreak or whatever these things. And I'm like, I'm not unique in this. It's everybody. But like, how do you find the balance there? So the mood swing, I have this idea of wanting to create this magical swing on top of a hill that when kids come and ride it, it mirrors their emotions. So if they're happy, and I remember when I was a kid and I'd ride a swing, I would always imagine that like when I'm at the apex of the swing, I would blast off in a rocket ship through space. I think a lot of kids probably had that imagination. You look up at the clouds and you're like, whoosh. So it's like, okay, let's say this swing really does that. You're feeling happy at the top of the swing, you blast off into this amazing ride throughout outer space, which was my dream come true. But when you're sad, all of a sudden, when you look down at the bottom of the swing, there's a pit of quicksand. And you fall down into a pit of quicksand, which feels like life sometimes. So you fall into an emotion that just takes you down, 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 and there's nothing you can do to get out of it. And the whole point of this is this little boy has to learn to ride the swing, and he comes and rides it at the beginning of the story when he has both his mom and dad with him. And he has this epic ride. He comes back to the swing later, and this time he's just with his mom. And something happened to his father. And this time, when he's riding the swing, expecting it's going to take him up, it doesn't. And he falls into the quicksand. And through the help of his mom, and some magical, wonderful magic that you got to read the story for, he is picked up out of the quicksand and learns how to find the balance of the swing. And realizing that the swinging itself, feeling the wind in his hair, the sun on his face, that's the joy of the swing. Neither the thing at the very, very top nor the thing at the very, very bottom, but the path in between, which is very Zen and very much what I came to learn about life, which is it is that state of presence. So I wrote this, and I wanted it to be an animated film, and for a while I pursued that path. As creative, I think our creations take on a life of their own very often, and it started being clear that all the development I was doing as an animated film, well, this subject matter was really a book. It was basically a story I was writing for kids dealing with grief. What kid's going to turn on a film by themselves that deals with grief? It's like, I think this is something that should be shared between a parent and a child, and a book, a picture book that can be a point of connection between maybe a mother or a father and son or daughter at the point of grief. That could be powerful. So I turned it into a children's book. My illustrator, Momo, did an incredible job, hand drew every single inch of that book from this artwork that I was creating for an animated film. Made it into a book. I submitted it to a bunch of his agents and publishers. Nobody bit. I was a nobody first-time author. I was a filmmaker. Like, it didn't make sense why I was doing this. So I said, okay, I'll just self-publish it. Found a printer, made the book the highest quality I could, and we released the book a year ago. And it's been used now at Camp Widow, which is a camp for kids struggling with grief. It's been a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists have talked about it and how helpful it's been. Lorenzo's House is a organization for kids who deal with early onset dementia with their parents, and some of them lose their parents. And so it's been a useful tool for exactly what I hoped for, which is for kids dealing with grief, because storytelling was one of the strongest tools that when I was going through my grief helped me out. So it was kind of my way of giving back. And then I still had the bug in me to want to make a film out of it because that's my first language creatively. And so I did the book, but I was like, I still have music I kind of was making for, I was like, So then we decided to did a live action short film of the book being read, a mother reading the book to her son after their father passes at night, and the book comes to life in the boy's room and gives him comfort and solace for a night. And he realizes that he's not really alone, and his father's always with him, which is obviously a super personal story. And it is my journey that I found throughout grief. And I felt like I needed to complete that karmic circle and create a story that could give back, because my heart feels very healed after all that. Grief's a lifelong process, but I feel quite healed. And so I wanted to, give something back. And I didn't go into it, Rob, being like, I want to make children's content as a genre. I wasn't in love with that medium, but that's just like what the story was. Yeah. I was writing a story for myself as a 10-year-old boy. So that's just what it was. Yeah. And all these different genres and all these different things I play within, they're not thoughtful of like, I want to play in this genre. It's like, this is the story on my heart. Now here's the genre with which that story can be best brought to life. Mm-hmm. And what comes from that is a smorgasbord of work that my managers for a while was like, can you pick a lane? And I was like, I just don't think of it that way. Right. And I get that the rest of the industry wants to think of artists that way, which makes sense. You got it. Like if you're an executive and your job is to find a director to pair with a sci-fi story, you're going to want to find a director that's done a bunch of sci-fi. Mm-hmm. A director that's done sci-fi, children's, food document, like all these other things. It's complicated. Mm-hmm. But I don't go that way. Like I don't create based off of what I think something outside of me wants. I create based on what something inside of me wants. Yep. What comes from that is none of my business, and I hope it can find a way into the world. But that's my job, is to get it out.
Yeah. And what's great about that is that in just accepting that, you don't pigeonhole yourself, which is phenomenal. Because you can be like George Miller and you can do Happy Feet, you can do Mad Max, I was really touched by that. I was really touched by that film. I thought that was phenomenal. And
thank you.
You should talk to the Kuhnhart brothers, because they're a great producing team, and their great grandmother had a very interesting story. She wrote the Pat the Bunny, and Pat the Bunny was the first children's book that actually had like textures in it and everything, so you could like pat Dad's beard, or you could like pull the cover up and the cover had like a fabric to it and it was like the first interactive book. It was it's 100 years ago, but
that's awesome.
It completely brought their family up out of poverty. Like they were a very wealthy family from textiles, lost the whole fortune, and then their great-grandmother is like, I'm going to go back to doing what I love, she was an artist, and she's like, I'm going to make this children's book. Makes this children's book out of her own grief and like having to try to like, get, work through that. And it literally transformed the entire like life of their family, which is wild.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think you're onto something with that, man.
Well, I do think that we're all given ideas, and if you're given an idea, you kind of are given, if you're given the ability, you're given the responsibility, I think. Yeah. And so it's very challenging. I'm not saying that this is like the best advice to pay your rent. Mm-hmm. You got to figure that. You got to give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, give to God what belongs to God. And I do believe God gives me ideas, gives every person ideas, and especially if they come from that pure place, you've got to see them through. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To see them through, sometimes you got to do something for Caesar. Mm. You got to pay your rent, eat some food. So you got to maybe do some work. But I think as a creative artist, your job is to find the balance between what you're willing to do to just keep moving forward and pay your rent and give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And I used to, on my whiteboard in my office, I had like 2 columns for Caesar, for God. And when I was first kind of doing the entrepreneurial life, I never had a real job after graduating film school. I just started my own company and did it my way. And
I tell people that story all the time, by the way, the naming of your company.
Yeah, the Mats.
I think that is the best story ever.
Shout out Matt Law. Matt Law, my brother and creative. I mean, just everything. We have a company together, which is literally like having a child that has like a birth date and like a social security number and a bank account. And he's my best man and officiant at my wedding. Amazing human. And we started a company in film school, and we're both named Matt. And we were trying to come up with what our company name should be, and we were at the PGA breakfast. I was maybe a junior. Matt was a senior, and we were very running around. There's David Fincher over here, and there's Clint Eastwood and Alejandro Inarritu, and we were trying to network with everybody. But Fincher was kind of like sitting off to the side on the stairs by himself. He like didn't really care about all the paparazzi and everything, and he's just chilling. And we recognize him, so we go right up to him. We said, "Mr. Fincher, just thank you so much for first of all, making amazing films, but also like the director's commentaries that you would make for your films have been so helpful to us," which was true. Matt and I loved those commentaries because you really cracked open his process. Yeah. And I was like, it's very educational. I was like, thank you. And he was like, oh man, thank you so much. What's your name? And I was like, Matt. And he's like, what's your name? He's like, Matt. And he goes, the Matts. And we're like, yeah, okay. And then as we were saying goodbye to him, like a couple hours later, and he's leaving, getting into his car, and all the paparazzi are there taking pictures of everybody getting back into their cars, leaving, and we're waving to him. We're like, bye, Mr. Fincher. And he just didn't say bye to anybody else, but just raised his hand and go, see you later, the Matts. And so Matt and I looked at each other like, that's got to be our name, the Matts. So technically David Fincher gave us our company name, and Matt and I utilized the Matts to be our home base where we could, pay ourselves, pay our friends as often as possible, doing what we love. And a lot of that's some of that was client work, and some of that though was really cool things. We did indie features. We just were like, we're gonna just create our own mechanism to give to God what belongs to God and give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And so for 10 years, and we still have that company, and every once in a while we'll do something under the Matts. But it will forever be the thing that gave us this launch pad to just find our own voices, just create what we wanted to create with the people we love. And we found our rhythm of how to do things that were for making money and keeping the lights on, and how to do things that enabled us to understand more about ourselves as artists and create things. And I will say that some people need structure. They need to go work for somebody else. That's just how their brains work. Some people are entrepreneurs at heart, and they need to give themselves ultimate freedom. And we quickly recognized we were in that. We needed ultimate freedom for our growth. Yeah. And that's what it gave us. So, yeah, Matt Law, yeah.
I remember the week after I decided to go freelance, it was very iffy because we were still not fully out of the whole COVID situation yet. But I was working for this billionaire, and I was burning out. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I got to get out of this. And I had stacked some cash, and I was like, I'm going freelance. And like, it was very scary to make that jump, to be like, okay, I'm just going to do the freelance thing. Literally a week after I did that, Rob Smith hit me up and was like, come do this project with you guys. And that was how I met you guys. And I was like literally blown away by how God provided for that, because I met so many amazing people within that group. Will Rouse, you, Matt Law. It's just, and just so many amazing people. It's just a real pleasure to know you guys and to see what you guys are putting out.
Thank you.
There was one last thing I wanted to tell you.
Well, I just got to say that, Rob, you joining into this group too, or I should say our group expanding with the beauty of your heart, soul, craft, it has been such a joy for us, because you find a way to reflect a mirror onto the things we do, whether it's you're there and you're capturing what we're doing behind the scenes, or you're there creating like these awesome aerials that make our production value go up like 1,000,000 times, or just doing something like this where you're just giving us an opportunity to communicate what's on our hearts. Like you have a very special gift too, and an entrepreneurial spirit too that we're super grateful for. So thank you for being you. And I love your idea you told me in the kitchen. I don't know if you're like announcing it or whatever, but I love the idea of wanting to be a fulcrum with which a lot of great creative people can come together around, because you're right, we're in a weird epoch change in the industry, and when times like this happen, you gotta like band together and build your own. Like I think of it like in Finding Nemo, there's the great drop off, you know, they're in the coral reef and everything's like organized, and then there's the drop off, and the only way to survive in the drop off is you create your own school of fish.
Totally.
And I think I've gotten to the point, and maybe you have in your career too, where you're like, okay, at some point everybody's talented. You get to a point where like everyone has amazing talent. But there's something that you start to recognize that's deeper and beneath the talent, which is actually just like a soul's calibration. And you're like, I want to be around that.
Yeah.
And you just so happen to be talented. But the reason I actually want to be around that is more so because it's like the way you see the world, the way you treat people, the way you just move through things. It's like, that's the way I move through things. And I want to be in that rhythm. And I do think that that's the special part of the group that, Matt and I, when we work on sets and the people we keep around us, we're very discerning about that. Of course, everyone's talented and awesome, but it's got to be deeper than that. When you make a film, it's so stressful. There's so many things that go wrong. There's so many reasons to be upset. We want to be with the people that like can take that on the chin and be chill. Yeah. And make great work.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I'm the most grateful for, is that, I have found that, this crew for Anomaly, everything I've made over the past couple of years, I feel like the people are like family, and I want to go do that dinner after we wrap for the day on set, and I want to go break bread with these people, and I want to know how their families are doing, and because they are like family, they're a creative family, and because we all swim the same way.
Well said, brother. Well said. Dude,
Thanks,
thank you for today, man. I really appreciate it, and I'm stoked for Anomaly. I'm stoked for everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you coming in. We'll do it again after the other stuff comes out.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for being you. Appreciate you, man.